Hi, I'm attorney Tammy Saltzman, and you are watching Divorce Connection Network. Welcome. Today, I am so pleased to introduce everyone to Mark Roseman, a PhD, and he's also the founder of the Toby Center for Family Transitions. And that's important because when couples are going through a divorce, their entire life and their entire family dynamics and their entire relationship with their children and all of their relations with their in-laws are going through a transition. It's a very unsettling time. So it's so great to welcome you, Mark,
Thank you,
to the show, and to know that there are places out there where families can go as a whole and families can go as individuals to get the help that they need while going through these transitions. So, Mark, we briefly discussed offering the audience, they're all contemplating divorce out there in one form or another. We've had several shows on how to save marriages, and I know that your first tip is about pausing. So I'm aware that couples sometimes in the heat of the moment will say, I want a divorce, and they pack their bag and they go to their mother's house, to spend the night, or to a hotel to spend the night, or maybe to a paramour's to spend the night. And then they call the divorce attorney and they get divorced. So your first tip to the audience would be pause.
It would be pause. As humans, we're very complicated people. And that complication leads to many different emotions. We all, there's a term, Tammy, that's frequently used, baggage. And there's no such thing as baggage. What there is such thing is history. And we're all products of environments, and we're all products of family lives, whether to some degree of dysfunction or some degree of joy and consistency and continuity. But we all have experiences that we bring into a relationship, whether we've been married or whether we've been in a relationship as an unmarried couple. Boyfriend, girlfriend for a period of time. But everyone brings something into that relationship. And there is always going to be something that will be off-putting, offsetting, and really disturbing based on what is said or a behavior that may elicit a response. Why? Because we're emotional beings.
You mentioned that approximately 10% of the couples that have been divorced might not have gotten divorced had they had the proper tools to repair and work on their marriages. Is that correct?
This is correct. In fact, the 10% is on the low end. But research has found that to be true.
When a couple comes in, well, usually I get either a husband or a wife, one or the other, come in for a consult. But one of the first questions I ask them, Mark, is, have you sought counseling? Have you tried everything? Have you gone to your rabbi or your priest? Have you gone away for a romantic weekend to Jamaica and just soaked up the rays?
What's wrong with Connecticut?
Oh, Connecticut. Bed and breakfast in Connecticut could be good too. So I've always asked, marriage is a big commitment and divorce is huge. So before you actually hire me to get you divorced, my recommendation is you try everything under the sun, especially if you have children.
Very sensible. Very sensible. And as you had mentioned, when people are in the thick of anger, the thick of change, the thick of surprise and shock. I won't quote Bush by saying awe, but quite honestly, when we're in this immediate tumult, we can't think. And we're not expected to think. And I think we need to be acknowledged that what we feel is genuine, but that's why the pause is so important.
Which leads us right to your second tip for couples, which is to find intervention. You know, like you said, in the thick of things, you've got a lot of emotions rushing. You may say something that you've been holding on to for a really long time, and it kind of comes out, and it's like the big elephant in the room all of a sudden. And sometimes couples are not even aware of how they're feeling or what needs are not being met that is causing them so much unhappiness. So if they're in that place, what you're recommending is that they find a therapeutic facility or a counselor of some kind, or perhaps a self-help book that could intervene and help them to flush out what the issues are in order to save the marriage. Is that correct?
It is correct. You need to make the effort because you vested so much in the relationship, in the marriage. You have children, particularly if you have children. It's really vital for both of you, both parties, to have some awareness. By the way, it's research in, I believe it was the University of Minnesota, said that it only takes one person to make a change in the dynamic. And if one person of the dyad, of the couple, is interested and committed to doing this research and making that effort with a therapist or a divorce coach, then it is their awareness, it is their understanding, and it is their new behavior, new communication that can help change and re-solidify that relationship.
I know at the Toby Center you offer mediation services. Do you find that you use your mediation services to help couples resolve issues within their marriage, or do you only use your mediation services in the divorce capacity?
I think that's an excellent question. We began as a nonprofit organization. All of our services, which are multiple, are sliding scale based on affordability.
Very important.
But in terms of the mediation process, I think mediation is used by people unconsciously, in fact. The peacemakers of our world are mediators looking to see how can we resolve conflict. And how do we make change in a way that is smooth and not abrasive and certainly welcoming to the parties. In terms of divorce prevention, we offer coaching services. And the coaching really is an important step, particularly for males, because it's been found that males don't easily embrace, in general, statistically, they don't easily embrace therapeutic intervention. Whether they don't want to admit that there may be a problem. Therapy is not dealing with problems necessarily. Therapy is simply providing you a consultative way of learning more about yourself and having a reflection of what it is that you're saying and you're feeling and how it can be changed so that you have more clarity. And can take more empowerment actions.
I think the issue sometimes, and not that I would know, but with men in general and therapy is, I think men sometimes view it as a weakness, and that if they need a therapist, then in some way they're broken or they're weak, and that is not good for their masculinity and their identity. In my marriage, we used a marital counselor quite often, and he was able to flush out the issues in our marriage. We brought our children with us quite often, and there were many, many times when he and I would vehemently disagree on a topic, whether it had to do with the kids or how we spend money or anything. And I would say, why don't we defer to Dr. Mark? And he would agree, and we would schedule a session, and we'd go in and we'd speak with Dr. Mark, and then he would help us to make a decision, or sometimes he would say, Tammy, you're overreacting. I think you need to soften up a little bit. Or he would say to my spouse, you need to step up. You need to be more on her side and less on the kid's side. So I found it to be very good for our marriage, and I continue to use his services even after I'm divorced. So I just think that if sometimes you have a hard time identifying what is upsetting you, so it helps into looking within and helping you to identify, and then it gives you the tools to properly communicate in a way so that your spouse can hear it without becoming defensive.
It's very true, and I was laughing because it was, oftentimes laughter is validation, and I was validating what you were saying because I've personally experienced it. I went through a very difficult divorce many years ago, but the reasons for conflict are those, including those that you've mentioned, and they're common. But I think that having a third party who both people can respect, both people can see as neutral, and both people can trust, that is a way to affect healing. That is a way to affect change in your relationship.
Which brings us to our third tip, which we're going to have to rush through, and I apologize for the time constraints. But the third tip from Mark would be how important your family dynamic is to your children once you are divorced. The courts use the term in the best interest of the child, and Mark and I were talking right before we went on air, and he expressed how important it is for children to feel safe and secure in the family after the divorce, and how important it is for the parents to be aligned and get along for the sake of their children forever. And I can tell you, it is forever. I mean, I'm divorced 4 years. We just had a bar mitzvah for my son. Thank you. My ex-husband and I shared in that beautiful mitzvah. My daughter just got engaged a couple of weeks ago. Thank you. And so we have an engagement party to plan and a wedding to plan. And I just moved into a new home, and I invited my ex-husband and his girlfriend to dinner in August when we're back from vacation. And my son said to me, and it was so beautiful, he said, "Mom, nothing makes me happier than when you and Dad get along."
This is an example of more the ideal post-separation, post-divorce. And I certainly, as research shows, it's so important for both parents to be involved in the children's lives, and sometimes it's anger issues that remain with one or the other spouse that really continue to interfere with that relationship. Children become brainwashed. Children are discouraged from having a relationship with the other parent, and in fact, that's a reason why I got into the field, because my children were brainwashed, and I have not seen them since 1997, in spite of fighting in the court for 5 years. So I have somewhat of a jaded look, but a very true and accurate understanding of what 30% of couples experience. Those are the extremes where you have high conflict. And high conflict is deadly. I would think of this: 40% of children in public school are products of single-parent households. Now, that in itself is not necessarily bad when you consider these statistics that are seldom related, and that is 40% of children are not only products of single-parent households, but they suffer alcohol and drug abuse, low self-esteem, juvenile crime. You find teen pregnancy. And that's because there's a lack of primarily a father from their lives. And this is from the Department of Health and Human Services, federal government. So the importance of parental interactions with their children's post-divorce is critical.
Critical. I can tell you that one of the most important things is for couples to get along ongoingly, forgive and forget. Focus on the future. Thanks for joining us, Mark. Thanks for joining us. And you can find information about Mark on our website, divorceconnectionnetwork.com. Thanks for coming.